your man, Louie T. Welcome to Draft Prospects 101 Live. Tonight we're talking linebackers, and I must say, this is the first time in a long time I've been this excited about the linebacker position, and not just because my favorite team happens to need one or two linebackers this offseason, depending on who you ask. However, this is a really good crop of linebackers, and we generally don't get this in the draft. We've had drafts where there have been two top guys, like a couple of years ago when there were the two Devins, and you had to get them early. Devin White went top 5. I think he ended up going either 4 or 5 to Tampa. And then the Steelers traded up to 10 to get Devin Bush. And then there was a steep drop-off at the linebacker position after that. You'll get a couple of gems, a Tremaine Edmonds in the first round, or you'll get a Darius Leonard in the second round. And you'll find gems scattered amongst the draft. Third round, fourth round, fifth round guy, an undrafted guy will come out of nowhere at times. But for the most part, we don't go into the draft saying this is a deep draft class at the linebacker position, and you could see 3 or 4 guys come off the board in the first round, and you'll definitely see 5 or 6 come off within the first 2 rounds. Generally, we don't find ourselves saying that when talking linebackers in the draft, but this is a very unique crop of linebackers, and you can get whatever flavor you need. Looking for a middle linebacker, looking for a Mike that'll come down, hit you in the mouth, blitz, and drop into coverage. You're looking for a guy that's strictly pure cover guy over the slot, can cover wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, etc., etc. You're looking for a guy that can do a little bit of both. I mean, this draft has it all at the linebacker. I've been really impressed with what I've seen. It's got guys with tremendous upside. There are guys that you know exactly what you're getting. There are guys that you got a couple of questions about, but they can iron those things out, or it is who they are, and you have to either be willing to deal with it or find a way to work around it. One thing's for sure. This is a very talented group of linebackers. I'm excited about them. Generally, I'm not this excited about the linebacker position, which is why I decided to do this one second. And so we're going to talk about these linebackers. I'm going to give you my rankings tonight and put them in the order in which I think they should come off the board. Now, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Chris Sims released his quarterback list. People were asking me about that list. What do you think? And I'm like, look, I don't have any problems with it. You put in the work. You're allowed to make your own list, and you're allowed to put players where you think they should go. I don't have a problem with his 1 or his 2 because I told you I could see Zach Wilson being 1 on people's board. He's that good. You know, if not for the injury concerns and the Utah game in 2019 and the Coastal Carolina game in 2020, there may be a real discussion for me. But I've seen Trevor Lawrence in those moments rise to the occasion. I know what I'm getting. He's a big kid, all right, whereas, you know, Wilson has that slender frame. But look, I told you, I could see how someone could have him number 1 on their board. He's that dynamic, okay? Now, 3 through 6 on his thing, look, hey, he's used to be a quarterback in this league. He evaluates them at a different level. I can't argue with what he's finding. I'm just going to tell you I disagree. Vehemently disagree. You know, I think Kellen Mond might have been 3rd on his list. Are you serious? Again, sometimes, and I'm just saying, sometimes I feel like he does things just to get a rise out of people and to create conversation like the one we're having right now. So at the end of the day, if you've watched these players, you've got your own list, you've got your own eyeballs, and you feel a way about these guys and you'll put them in the order you think they go. For me, I'm going to give you mine tonight. And so before we get to that, I do want to read a couple of super chats that I have real quick. Knock these out before we get to our linebackers tonight. Middle linebacker, or excuse me, Matthew. I've been watching so many linebackers on film, and I'm still not done. Got about 4 more that I want to comb through before this process is done and I move on to the next position. But Matthew Stansberry, Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Matthew writes, no team name, no mascot, no QB, now no cheerleaders. What the heck is going on in Washington? Keep up the great work, bro. You rock. Actually, we do have cheerleaders. They're co-ed cheerleaders. They've gone too far, if you ask me. I'll save that for tomorrow night on the Washington Football Report live show. But come on, man. You got to draw the line. I know we're out here for equality, and we want everybody to have equal rights and this, that, and the third. And Washington has really done a total 180 when it comes to being at the forefront of social justice and change and really, doing the things that we talk about that is lip service. They've put it into action. First black team president, first female head of communications within the organization. They've done a bunch of things. First full-time female assistant coach. Like, they've done or I think might have been African-American female assistant coach. May just be female. I think it's African-American. Doesn't matter. They've been kind of on the cutting edge of everything here of late. Now they want to be the first to have co-ed cheerleaders. This is not high school, okay? Stop with the nonsense. But again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Matthew Stansberry. Got another super chat. This one is from Just Andre. Thank you for the super chat, Just Andre. Greatly appreciate you, my man. Just Andre writes, what middle linebacker you think fits best with the Washington football team? We can talk about that tomorrow. I don't want to bog this show down with conversations about our team specifically, but there are quite a few guys in this draft. I think I've got one in mind in particular that would fit the team really well. There are a couple of guys that I'm really smitten by. But again, it's all in what you're looking for and what exactly you're going to ask that guy to do in particular. Because you can't just take every player and say that because this guy can do this, he's going to fit into this defense perfectly. You got to know what you're signing up for. So not every player fits into every scheme. And, you got to know what you're signing up for. So there are a few guys in this draft that are very interesting. There's a few in particular that I think could be great fits for Jack Del Rio's defense. But there's one in particular that I am interested in. And we'll see if there are any more that arise. I told you I'm not done with my homework yet. And so it may not be a first-round guy. Maybe a second or a third-round guy that ultimately is the one that I think fits this defense, and you could go in a different direction. And, again, there's still free agency. Do not forget that as well. But I digress. Let's get to my linebacker rankings for the 2021 NFL Draft. And like I said, it's a hell of a group, and we're going to dive right in, starting with my number 7 linebacker in the 2021 NFL Draft. And that guy is Cameron Mcgrone. This is a linebacker out of Michigan, a guy that, to me, is extremely raw. If we were in a perfect world, he would have gone back to school. You're talking about a redshirt sophomore. This is a guy with only like 12 starts under his belt or so. Not a ton of experience for Cameron Mcgrone. And honestly, I think he could use more seasoning. But it was a very tumultuous 2020 season for him. He dealt with a ton of injuries. It wasn't the kind of season he was hoping for. You can see the talent. You can see the potential. But I just think he needed more time, but he decided to jump ship, to try his hand at the NFL. I don't blame him. I never blame a player for leaving early. I always talk about not knowing circumstances, and I get your money while you can. And he dealt with a ton of injuries. This thing is not guaranteed to you. Go get your bread. If he talked to the NFL advisory board and they told him, hey, you're more likely than not a day 2 pick, why not? So let's go ahead and flip this card over and take a look at Cameron Mcgrone. And so You start with his strengths, and it's athleticism and speed. This is a guy that can just flat out run, and you can see it. When he gets to open up, there's no doubt about it. He gets to the ball carrier immediately. So he's got tremendous athleticism, can get anywhere he wants to on the field in a hurry. So that's not something you worry about. And again, when we're talking about some of the better linebackers in the league, there's one common denominator. They can run. You know, when we talk about Demario Davis, and this is a guy that is more likely than not a Mike backer at the next level. So when you're talking Mike backers, you know, the Darius Leonards and the Demario Davises and the, you know, Bobby Wagners, there's one common thread there. And really any linebacker in this league for that matter. Weak side, Mike, does or Sam. It doesn't matter. You've got to be able to run if you want to be classified as one of the best, and Cameron Mcgrone can do that. Agility and short area quickness, again, another big trait that you need to be able to have, especially if you're in the middle of the football field. If you're going to be checking running backs out of the backfield, you're going to get a lot of option routes. You're going to get a lot of choice routes by the running backs. You're going to get a lot of Texas routes over the middle of the football field. You better be able to stick your foot in the ground, change directions, and run with that running back. He can do that. Physicality and stout at the point of attack. He's a guy that doesn't turn down contact. And again, if you're going to be in the middle of a defense, you want a guy that's not afraid to take on a pulling guard, not afraid to take on that guard that is combo blocking and coming off of the double team and getting to the second level, or take on that center and try to get to the ball carrier. And even if your job on that particular play isn't necessarily to make the play, but rather to just fill a gap, Cameron Mcgrone is able to do that. Tackling prowess. Again, I'm big on tackling. You know, not everyone is huge on, you know, getting people on the ground on a consistent basis. You know, when I read some of these reports on some of these players, and again, not everybody's watching the same games that I'm watching. You watch the 3 games where this guy was outstanding, and, you know, I watched 3 games where he struggled. We have a very different opinion of the same player. But, you know, tackling for me is important in this league. And there are a lot of times where we just gloss over that. You know, the guy missed 4 tackles in the game, but we don't talk about lack of consistency tackling and getting guys on the ground. But he is a guy that does get players on the ground. Blitzer and closing speed. As I've mentioned, at the next level, if you want to be considered one of the better linebackers, you got to be able to get to the quarterback. You got to be able to affect the quarterback, not just drop into coverage, not just stop the run, but you got to be able to impact the game at multiple levels. And being a blitzer is one of them. And when you've got the kind of speed that Cameron Mcgrone has, and the closing speed, rather, it really changes things. When you run that green dog blitz, where the running back stays in and you overload a side, and that back decides to go and protect off to the left, and now you've got a clear shot right up the A gap and you take off. It's the ability to close that distance between where you are and the quarterback that makes all the difference in the world between a completion or a sack or an incompletion or a ball that ends up getting affected in the air and gets picked off, whatever the case may be. So he's able to close the distance between the ball carrier and himself. He's tough. He's got toughness, and he showed that this year in 2020, dealing with a hand injury. You know, he had a wrap on it and he kept playing ball. And we see players do that all the time, but it still takes a level of toughness and intestinal fortitude to be able to say, hey, put a cast on it, I'm going out and I'm playing. Especially the linebacker position where you need your hand. It's one thing to do it at the cornerback position where you may not catch the ball. Most of those corners can't catch, collapse in a whorehouse anyway. But when you're a linebacker, you need both your hands because you need to corral guys, and he was out there playing ball with a club on his hand. Motor, he's a guy that's just nonstop. You know, nonstop. It isn't always in the right direction, but it's 100 miles an hour wherever the hell he's going, and I can respect that. Weaknesses. I talked about the lack of experience at the top of his breakdown. This is a guy that, to me, really could have used another year of seasoning in college. But that said, it is what it is. Only 12 starts under his belt. And the 5 that he got this year were kind of, a disappointment, if you ask many, because it was a step back from what they saw in the 7 starts as a redshirt freshman. So where he really jumped on the scene, there was an injury to the starting middle linebacker. He jumped in as a redshirt freshman, and he exploded onto the scene, played exceptional football. And when that guy was healthy, his job wasn't waiting on him. Cameron Mcgrone had taken over that spot. So he didn't follow that up with the kind of campaign you were hoping for. But again, injuries too. And then COVID-19, is a big part of that as well, maybe. GPS malfunction. This is my biggest issue with him. This can be cleaned up, but this is part of lack of experience. He can be duped very easily, and his GPS seems to malfunction quite often. Misdirection sends him in a tizzy. If you fake a pitch one way, he's running, chasing the fake pitch 4 or 5 yards in the wrong direction before he realizes, quarterback actually didn't pitch the football. If you get any kind of run action fake, he's chasing the run action. So if it's a stretch to the left, if it's outside zone, but it's a fake to the left, he's chasing outside zone like nobody's business. He's attacking the line of scrimmage, only to find out that the running back doesn't have the football. Quarterback pulled that out a long time ago. He's running towards the right and looking for option out to his right. Zone read, I don't kill guys on zone read. It's hard when you get to read option type plays and the quarterback can pull it, or if you've got running back responsibility, you want the quarterback to pull it. If that quarterback isn't a tremendous athlete, you want him to pull it. But I can't tell you how many times he tackled the wrong guy, where I felt like you probably could have tackled the quarterback, but whatever. I'm not going to kill him for that. But his GPS does malfunction. Durability. I talked about him with a broken hand, had a cast on it. Also finished the season on IR. Was carted off in his final collegiate game with a knee injury. So again, this is a guy that, not a lot of seasons under his belt to be able to say, hey, this isn't an issue. In his first season of full-time being a starter, he dealt with a couple of injuries. So that's something to keep in mind. And then can he be a 3-down linebacker? I mean, a lot of what I talked about omitted him in coverage. You didn't hear me speak one time about him in coverage because there are question marks about his ability in coverage. Sometimes in space, he's a little aloof, a guy that sometimes loses sight of where he is on the football field in relationship to receivers. A lot of times he's running to a patch of grass instead of running to, a receiver running into his zone and matching him. So there's a lot left to be desired with Cameron Mcgrone in that regard. And so you have to ask, is he a 3-down linebacker at this point? Now, he's got all the tools to be one. I just think there's going to be a little bit of a period there where he needs to develop. And how long does that take? Is he given an opportunity to do that properly? We'll see. And that's always the crapshoot when you're talking about the NFL draft, is where do you land? If Tom Brady doesn't land in New England, is he Tom Brady? We don't know. But in any event, I project him as a day 2 draft pick. I'm more on the 3rd round side of the day 2 selection than I am the 2nd round. But I could see someone falling in love with the attributes of Cameron Mcgrone and taking him in the 2nd. But I think he's a 3rd round pick all day long. I don't see him getting out of the 2nd day of this draft. And my comp for him is Demario Davis. And I remember Demario Davis being a raw prospect out of Arkansas State, coming into the league. The Jets took him in the 3rd round, and I said, man, this guy's got a ton of talent, but he's raw as the day is long. I look at Cameron Mcgrone, and I think the same exact thing. This guy's got all the attributes to be an elite Mike backer in this league, but he just needs some seasoning. And when Demario Davis came into the league, he went to the Jets. And they weren't happy. They traded him to the Browns, I believe, or he either left in free agency or he was traded. And then that didn't work out in Cleveland. He ends up in New Orleans, and the rest is history. And he's one of the better middle linebackers in the league right now. So Cameron Mcgrone reminds me a lot of Demario Davis from a skill set standpoint. We'll see if it turns out to be that way. He is my number 7 linebacker in this draft as we get to number 6. And that is Jabril Cox, linebacker out of LSU. This is a guy that, I'm not going to lie to you, I was expecting a little bit more on tape from him than what I saw. I went back and I watched some tape of him at North Dakota State. He spent the first 3 years of his career there and then transferred his final year in college to LSU. And I thought it was a great decision because more eyeballs were then on Jabril Cox at LSU, and he may have made himself a first-round pick. We'll see. But let's take a look at his card and flip this thing over and take a look at Jabril Cox. And the first thing you'll see is he's got a tremendous frame, man. His size and frame are excellent for what he's going to be asked to do more likely than not at the next level. 6'3", 233 to be dropping over the slot. Are you kidding me? And he's got the ability to run with just about anybody. You put a shifty slot receiver, I think he's got the tools to run with that guy. You put a big slot, and that's the new thing. It's like cycles. We talk about, fads and things coming around in cycles. And, at one point, I remember the big slot receiver being in, Jake Reed in Minnesota and Joe Juravicius in Tampa Bay and, Ed McCaffrey back in the day. The big slot was in. And then it became the Wes Welkers of the world, and all of those guys came along and they changed that narrative, and it became the small guy was in vogue. And now it's kind of getting back to teams finding ways to get bigger guys in the slot. And look, you'll always have the small shifty guys, but now the big slot is starting to come back. And when you can find a guy like Jabril Cox to drop over the slot, it changes things. We'll talk about his coverage ability a little bit more. But that size and frame, intriguing as hell at 6'3", 233. Athleticism and speed, that's not something you worry about with Jabril Cox. He can run, period. End of discussion. Nothing else that needs to be said. Also, I will tell you that his agility and short area quickness, second to none. If it wasn't for the Joker in this draft, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, this guy is your best pure cover linebacker, hands down, no questions asked. So his agility, short area quickness, ability to stop, start, change directions, run with players. Again, he's got it all when you're talking about the agility, athleticism, short area quickness department. He checks all the boxes. Will take on blockers. He's not afraid of contact, although I question him at times. We'll talk about that a little bit later on when we get to his weaknesses. He'll take on blockers. He's not afraid. He'll mix it up with a 320-pound guard. He'll mix it up with the tight ends. He'll mix it up with the tackle. He'll mix it up. He's not afraid to take on contact. He's a quality tackler. Like, once he gets there, generally he gets guys on the ground. My problem is him getting to the guy with the ball. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But when he does get to the guy with the ball, generally they find grass. Okay? Coverage ability to me is his redeeming quality. It's the thing that stands out above everything else. When you're talking Jabril Cox, his coverage ability sets him apart from other linebackers in this draft outside of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Koramoah. So his coverage ability is elite. And it's that trait that may land him in the first round. I would not be shocked if someone looked at Jabril Cox, i.e. a New England Patriots. And, Belichick has always been a guy that looks at players and figures out what they do best and put them in those situations. And remember, there was this conversation about him trying to get Aqib Talib to come out of retirement just specifically to check tight ends, nothing else. And Aqib Talib said, man, he looked at the schedule and he said, this is a hell of a list of tight ends. I'm not getting my ass whooped. He retired. This is the kind of guy that erases tight ends. Jabril Cox is the guy that you got a problem with Travis Kelce. I'm not saying he's going to completely shut him down, but he gives you the best shot. Travis Kelce, 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", big target, you're dealing with a Hunter Henry problem, or you're dealing with, a Darren Waller problem, Jabril Cox is the guy that you sick on him and say, hey, limit his production. That's going to be his niche that he carves out for himself at the next level. Blitzer and closing speed. He's multifaceted in the sense that this guy can get after the quarterback. You give him a clear path to take off, he will be at your quarterback's doorstep in a heartbeat, okay? He'll be ringing that doorbell, and if he opens up, you're going to get a sack, forced fumble, or something along those lines. His closing speed is ridiculous. And he can blitz, as I mentioned. I want to see him do that a little bit more. I didn't think they did that enough with him at LSU at times. Experience. I talked about this guy playing 3 years at North Dakota State. Normally, experience isn't a big deal, but when you play on a championship caliber team like North Dakota State, he might have lost all of one game in 3 years at North Dakota State, and he might have won 3 straight championships, if I'm not mistaken, at NDSU. Then he goes to LSU. He's thinking he's going to go right into another prestigious university where they just came off of a national championship and they had a down year. But he's got tremendous experience. So he's not afraid of any situation. He's been in a bunch of them. And then durability. This is a guy that just plays. You don't worry about him getting injured. He's out there on a weekly basis. And again, your best ability in the NFL is availability. If you're not in, if you don't, I don't care how talented you are. If you're never healthy, what difference does it make? Weaknesses. He gets stuck on blocks too often. All right. That is a big deal for me. When you get stuck on blocks, that means you're not making plays. You're not making tackles. And there are too many times where you watch him and he's just comfortable taking on a guy. Hey, I did my job. Took on this blocker. I took on this offensive lineman, took on this tight end, took on this fullback, did my job. All right, somebody else make the tackle. And I'm like, hey, dude, go make a play. Is a bit too passive at times for me in the run game. This is a guy, and I put his motor up there as something that I question as well. But I don't like questioning guys' motor. I don't think he's got a big motor issue as much as it is he's just selective as to when he feels like being aggressive. That's problematic for me. I'm always going to side with the guy that just goes balls to the wall, hair on fire at all times. The guy that even if he's making a mistake, he's doing it 110 miles an hour. I'm that guy. I'm that guy that's going to always say, hey, I don't care if you make a mistake, just make it going as hard as you possibly can, and we'll fix it, but I won't have a problem with it. He doesn't always give me those types of vibes. Primarily a space player only. I don't want this guy really around the box. I don't want him in the core necessarily, especially if we're playing against the Cleveland Browns and I know they're going to try to beat us up in the run game and they're going to come out in 12 personnel, or 21 personnel. I really don't want any parts of Jabril Cox on the field in a situation where I think you're going to try to beat me up and bludgeon me to death with the run game. I want him out in space. When you flex out that tight end, when that running back goes in motion, when you got 3 wide receivers and you're in 11 personnel, that's when I want Jabril Cox on the field. I don't want him on the field for 21 personnel. I don't want him on the field for 13 personnel. I don't want him on the field for 12 personnel. Those situations, I'm scared of a guy like Jabril Cox being on the field. He's, to me, a guy I want out, away from the line of scrimmage, away from the core, detached from the box. I want him out in space because that's when he's his best. That's when he's his most dangerous. Can he be a 3-down linebacker if he doesn't change his mindset in terms of being more aggressive in the run game? Because he's got the ability to do it. He's got the frame to be able to do it. He's shown me that he can do it. Then he could be a 3-down linebacker. But if he is going to continue to be passive aggressive, I don't think he's got what it takes to be on the field in obvious run situations. So that's something to keep in mind. But I project this guy to be a second-round pick. There's too many traits here. And again, as I mentioned at the top of his breakdown, it would not shock me if someone said Jabril Cox has exactly what we're looking for. In today's NFL, where the tight end position is becoming a big mismatch nightmare and teams are utilizing that to their advantage, a guy like Jabril Cox becomes priceless. And so his value goes up in a situation like that. And I could easily see somebody snatching him up in the first round, but I think he's a second-round pick. I don't see him getting out of the second round. He's that talented. He's that good. And he has a trait that teams covet in today's NFL. My comp for him is Zach Cunningham. I remember when Zach Cunningham was coming out of Vandy, and I said, man, this guy's long. He's angular. He can run. I don't know if I thought Zach Cunningham was going to be as good in coverage as he ultimately turned out to be. But also, I question, could Zach Cunningham be a three-down linebacker? I remember having the same exact conversation. He turned into a tackling machine in the NFL. I could see Jabril Cox turning into that. I could see him turning into a coverage freak that, it turns into a tackling machine at the next level. I could see that happen. I see a lot of the same qualities I saw in Zach Cunningham coming out of Vandy in Jabril Cox. So we'll see if he morphs into that kind of player or not. But again, as I mentioned, got a lot of interesting. And another guy that came to my mind when I looked at him because of the ability to play in pass coverage and not necessarily a guy that is great in the run, was the ex-Rams linebacker that went to the Raiders. Dang it, what's his name? It'll come to me. Shucks. And he was exceptional. That's why that's why the Raiders gave him a big deal. Corey Littleton. That's his name. Corey Littleton. He reminds me a lot of Corey Littleton, too. Tremendous coverage ability, not necessarily the greatest tackler or a guy in the run game. We'll see what happens with Jabril Cox. He's my number 6 linebacker in this draft. We get to number 5, and it's Nick Bolton, linebacker out of Mizzou. This is a guy that I really, really like a lot. Think that this guy has a ton of talent. A player that I didn't know a lot about coming into this process, but he's shown me a lot, and really excited about what he could be. I think there's a lot left for him to learn and grow into as a player, but this is fun to watch. He's a fun guy to watch. Let's flip his card over and let's talk about Nick Bolton and what he brings to the table. Athleticism and speed, first things that jump out at you. This guy can run. There's a play against Alabama, my favorite play, and I'm definitely at some point going to upload that on one of these social media platforms. So if you're not following me, make sure you do that, where he literally jumps a blocker, dives into the backfield, and tackles Najee Harris for like a 2-yard loss. And it's a play where you see the speed, you see the closing ability, and then you see a guy that just goes balls to the wall. Acceleration and explosiveness. So when you hear the word explosiveness, that's different than closing speed. Explosiveness is where you see a guy and he looks like he's moving at a different rate of speed than everybody else on the field. When that guy actually revs it up and you see him, he's like a blur. And he's got that kind of movement capability at times. And I think the reason why it's so explosive is because of his physicality. We'll talk about that here in a second. Agility and short area quickness. Again, to me, 2 traits that you have to have if you're going to be a true difference-making middle linebacker in the NFL, which Nick Bolton projects to be. You got to be able to change directions. I talked about that already. about how, you're going to get these running backs coming out of the backfield. You're going to be put in some compromising situations with running backs one-on-one. They're going to isolate you. They're going to spread the field out. Everyone's going to be running deeper routes just so that running back can get, or outbreaking routes just so that running back can get one-on-one with you over the middle of the football field. And if you get broken off and you can't change directions, it could be a 75-yard house call. So he's got the agility and the short area quickness to be able to move and keep up with these shifty backs. And so to me, that's another big thing for these linebackers. And you see it with a lot of these guys in this year's draft. Physicality and stout at the point of attack. He's just so physical. To me, he's the most physical linebacker in this draft that I've watched to this point. And I've still got some other guys that I've got to take a look at. I can't imagine them being more physical than him. I can't. And the guy that I comp him to in Deion Jones, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I remember watching him, and he gave me Deion Jones vibes from the first tape that I put on, and I said, wow, he reminds me of Deion Jones. And then it was crazy because I looked at his size, and I said, damn, that's Deion Jones' size. I remember Deion Jones coming out of LSU like 6 feet, 227 or something around there, 228. And I just remember saying, man, Deion's kind of small, but boy, does he pack a hell of a punch. And same thing with Nick Bolton. 6 feet, 230, and he doesn't give a damn. He just doesn't care. Downhill attacker. He attacks the line of scrimmage. That's my kind of guy at the linebacker position. I don't really give a damn which one you're playing. Whether you're off the ball as a Will, you're on the ball as a Sam, or you're a Mike. I want my guys attacking the line of scrimmage. And I know that's not always what you're supposed to do. That's not always what the play calls for, is for you to be aggressive. But damn it, I love an aggressive, attacking linebacker. Man, I love watching linebackers that attack the line of scrimmage, and Nick Bolton does exactly that. This is the thing that I love about him the most, though. He explodes through contact. That's what Deion Jones did. He was a tremendous athlete, but he didn't slow down before contact. Most guys slow down before the point of contact because they know it's a collision. They know what's about to happen. There's no slowing down for Nick Bolton, okay? It's mash the gas, and whatever happens, happens. And I talk about him being a C3, okay? Car crash contact. When you hit a guy and it sounds like a head-on high-speed collision, that's Nick Bolton. Whether he's blitzing and there's a poor running back there that decides I'm going to put my body on the line to protect my quarterback, well, he's going to blow your ass up. You may get your job done, but you're going to pay for that shit, okay? Whether it's him crashing into a pulling guard or him crashing into a running back, he does it with reckless abandon, and man, is it fun to watch. Again, that leads to the next strength. Fearlessness and his motor. It just doesn't stop. He doesn't slow down. Again, I've always talked about return men and how, especially as a kick returner, and to a lesser degree a punt returner, because, with punt returners, you decide if you want to bring it out. Once you, as a kick returner, once you cross that thick white line called the goal line and you're in play, you got to go. And the best ones don't care about getting hit at a high rate of speed. You can tell guys that aren't going to be successful as kick returners because they want to run towards the sidelines or they want to slow down. The reason why Cordero Patterson and the Buffalo Bills kickoff returner are so great at what they do, Andre Roberts, is because they don't slow down. They don't care about getting hit. They know they're going to get hit, and they don't care if you wallop them. It's a fearlessness that few have. And Nick Bolton has that equivalent at the linebacker position. He's a short tackler. When he gets there, generally, he arrives with bad intentions. And even if he can't carry out those bad intentions, he at least gets you on the ground. Coverage ability, that's something that I think he can do. Okay, it's not truly a strength yet, but I see the makings of that. All right. I see the athleticism. I see the comfort in space. I just see inconsistencies in what he's doing, whether it's depth of drop, understanding what you're actually trying to accomplish or what the offense is trying to do to you. They're going to put that running back over the ball to suck you up so that they can get that dig route in behind you. Are you aware and cognizant of that? These are all things that he'll get better at over time. He's not there yet, but you see the talent dropping into coverage. You see him being able to run with guys step for step, 13, 15, 20 yards down the field. Durability. Again, 35 career games for him. It's not an issue for Nick Bolton. Tell him when and where, and he'll be there. Strap his helmet up, and he'll get ready to go much faster than slow. Weaknesses. Can be over-aggressive seeking tackles for loss. Again, I like my guys erring on the side of over-aggressiveness. Yes, that can get you beat at times. Absolutely. I'm aware of this. And there are many times where he'll shoot a gap, not knowing if he shot the right gap. And he'll shoot a shot. And sometimes it's a 3-yard tackle for loss. Other times it's a 7-yard gain because he's not in his proper gap and he decided to run behind where the play actually is going. Either way, he can be over aggressive. Again, I'm not going to kill him for that, but there's a time and a place for aggressiveness. And sometimes he can be over aggressive seeking tackles for loss. And so he'll shoot the gap, get into the backfield, but he's one gap behind where the ball is actually going. Poor pursuit angles. This is my biggest knock on Nick Bolton right now. He's got poor pursuit angles, whether he's in coverage. I can't tell you how many times I'm watching this guy chase a running back straight to the flats. And he's running around all kinds of traffic and he's bowing back 5-6 yards. And I'm like, dude, that's not how things go here when you're in man-to-man coverage. You can't be bowing back 6 yards when all you either need to do is go under that traffic or you need to slightly go over it. He's going back 3-4 yards, and I'm like, dude, that's going to get you beat up. You know, that's a simple dump down to that running back on the flare, and then all he's got to do is stick his foot. You're coming so damn fast. All he's got to do is stick his foot in the ground. You're going to go flying by. He's going to cut inside of you, and he's off to the races. Like, you can't be taking that kind of poor angle to the football. And that's not just, you know, to ball carriers when they have the ball in their hand. It's also, as I mentioned, in coverage as well. Becomes a liability the further away he is from the line of scrimmage. Again, he's got the athleticism to run. I just don't know if he's comfortable being, 22 yards away from the line of scrimmage. I don't know how many linebackers truly are comfortable being 25 yards away from the line of scrimmage, But still, you want your guys to be able, if you're playing Tampa 2, you don't want a guy that's going to just panic, hauling ass down the middle of the football field and just panic and run into a guy face guard and pick up a PI when all you have to do is turn around, locate ball, and make a play on it. So that's something else that, I want to see a little bit of maturation from him at. And then, is he a true 3-down linebacker? I spoke about all these coverage issues and things that I think he needs to clean up in that department. That begs the question, is he a 3-down linebacker? I think he's got all the tools to be one, but he's not there yet. So, that's something that I question right now. But to me, he's a second-round pick. There's just too much here for you to feel like, he's not worthy of a second-round pick. And to me, I've already talked about Deion Jones. Deion was raw. Remember, he only started 1 year at LSU. He waited his turn. He bided his time at LSU, got that 1 year, and he made the most of it. We parlayed that into a second-round pick. And Nick Bolton, not the same situation. He's been a starter for multiple years at Missouri. However, I see a lot of the same qualities in Deion Jones. He was raw coming into the league. I see Nick Bolton as a raw guy that could get it done. I think that Nick Bolton is a second-round pick all day long, all day strong. So he is my number 5 linebacker in this draft. I want to get to a couple of super chats before they go away. I saw a couple of super chats. I believe I saw a couple of super chats. Maybe it was just one. It's just one. This one is from Jay Willard. Thank you for the super chat, Jay Willard. Greatly appreciate you who writes, "Hey Lou, I know wrong stream, but talking linebackers just got me wondering and wanted your thoughts on Van Noy's fit for Washington. Might come cheap. Thanks, Lou." Number one, I don't think he's going to be super cheap. It's gonna. A lot of these deals are gonna be cheaper than they would be, which is why I think a lot of guys are gonna be willing to take 1-year deals. Excuse me, because the cap is projected to go skyrocket next year. So while you're gonna see a lot of guys getting cut that normally wouldn't get cut, so teams can get under the cap, and you're gonna see a lot of guys available. If you're smart and you trust in your abilities and you want to bet on yourself, you just sign a 1-year deal this year and hit the market again next year where there'll be a lot more dollars to be had. But that said, Van Noy would be a very solid fit. I like Kyle Van Noy. I don't love him. To me, he is a guy that is above average. But I don't want to settle for above average when there's a chance that you could potentially get elite. And I'm not saying that that's what we're going to get. There's this thing about, 1 in the hand versus 2 in the bush, where you say, hey, I've got a known commodity here in front of me. I don't know how the draft is going to shake out. I don't want to take the chance of bypassing a guy that's sitting here in front of me that I could take. Because Kyle Van Noy could definitely fit in Washington. I mean, if we could go a whole season with John Bostic at middle linebacker, then trust me, anything's an upgrade just about over John Bostic. Van Noy can run good enough. He's a much more instinctual football player. He's a much better playmaker. Yeah, he'd fit in the defense just fine. But again, how much is he going to cost? And does Washington see themselves in a position to upgrade it a little bit better? Van Noy, what is he? He's got to be every bit of 29, I would guess. 28, no less than 28, 29 potentially. Let's see how old Kyle Van Noy is. I bet you I'm going with 29. And like I said, 28 might be as low as it gets. He's 29. I hit it right on the head. So, again, why would you want to go the 29-year-old route when you could go get you a 23, 24-year-old? I mean, so there are a lot of factors that go into play. I mean, Jayon Brown, again, is he tremendous? Maybe, maybe not. But he's a lot younger, and he's going to be a lot cheaper, more likely than not, than potentially a Kyle Van Noy. We'll see. Again, this is going to be a weird offseason from a pay standpoint. A lot of guys may be a lot cheaper than we all assumed going into this process. But thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Got another, we move on to my number 4 linebacker. This may surprise some of you, but this is a fast riser for me. It's Chaz Serrat, linebacker out of North Carolina. This is a guy that has just impressed me. And when we get to our shakers and movers segment, this is the guy right here that shot up the board for me. Again, when I go into film study, I try not to go in with any preconceived notions. I don't care what anybody else's list looks like. I don't know what is being said about this player or not being said about him. I just go off of what I see. And what I saw was a guy that I walked away just impressed by. Simply put, I walked away saying, this guy is a beast, and I don't know why more people aren't talking Chaz Serrat. And, maybe it's the lack of experience. Maybe it's his brother. It might be outshining him and overshadowing him. I don't know if any of those things ring true or not, but I just know what I saw. And this is a guy with fringe first-round talent. Let's flip this thing over and talk about Chaz Serrat and what he brings to the table. So first thing for me with Chaz Serrat is his athleticism and speed. And again, when you talk about a guy that's an ex-quarterback that transitions to linebacker, you're not expecting this kind of athleticism. And so he came to North Carolina, started 7 games as a freshman, all right, gets injured. And so he comes back, has a disastrous game after he breaks his wrist, and he throws 3 interceptions, and he has a sit down with the coach at the time, and that coach says, look, dude, we're going to go in a different direction at the quarterback position, but I think you would make one hell of a linebacker. And nobody wants to hear that their dreams of being a starting quarterback are being dashed. Usually, if you can go somewhere else and start as a quarterback, you're going to transfer. And he contemplated transferring, and he was about to transfer. And then they fired the head coach, and Mack Brown comes in, and Mack Brown reassured him that your best opportunity to get to the NFL, and trust me, I know, is linebacker. And he said, well, I want to make it to the NFL, coach. And he said, well, I'm telling you, this is your best route right here. And he took Mack Brown's advice, and he hasn't looked back, and it's the best decision he's made in his life because this guy's legit. And the athleticism and speed really took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting what I got on tape. I started in 2019, and I worked my way to 2020, and it just all fit like a perfectly put together puzzle, man. All the pieces kind of just aligned. And it starts with his athleticism and speed. That's the building block. That's the foundation for everything that he does as a football player. Acceleration and closing speed, again, another one of those point A to point B guys. You know, Urban Meyer has this thing, I think it's 3 seconds, point A to point B, something like that, where he wants a guy going balls to the wall for from point A to point B for 7 seconds or something like that. And he's got the ability to just close the distance quickly. And I can't tell you how many times I'm watching this guy blitz, and just like that, he's at the quarterback. And I'm watching him against Clemson. He had 2 sacks in that game, tracked down Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence sees him coming, tries to rev up the engine. Lawrence is one of those striders, so he needs to have a little bit of a runway to get it revved up. Well, he was already coming at top speed before Trevor Lawrence could even take 2 steps. He's on the ground. Chaz Surratt's already tracked him down and sacked him. So this guy's closing ability and acceleration through the roof. Physicality and fearlessness. I talked about Nick Bolton and how he's a fearless guy. Doesn't give a damn. He's willing to sacrifice his body on every given snap. I'm watching Chaz Surratt against Syracuse, and there's a helpless receiver coming across on a shallow crosser, and he just mollywops him. Now, he knocks himself down for a little while and jammed his neck up for a bit. He had to stay on the field for a little while, but he shook the cobwebs out, came back onto the field, and had a whale of a ball game. That's just who he is. I watched him take Travis Etienne on a pass protection and put his dick in the dirt. I mean, absolutely steamrolled him on a play. So this is a guy that just, again, fearlessness when it comes to reckless abandon and not caring about his well-being or yours. Again, that's fun. Watching that for me is fun. Watching guys go out and put it out all on the line. He does that on every snap. Willingness at the point of attack. Again, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's 6'2", 227. So 6'2", 230 essentially. It's not the biggest guy in the world. You can't tell by the way he attacks the line of scrimmage, by the way he attacks offensive linemen and tight ends. Sometimes he gets his ass whooped. When you're 230, you're going to get your ass whooped by a guy that almost outweighs you by 100 pounds. That's going to happen. But he wins more than his fair share of battles. And more times than not, he does a great job of extending his arms, keeping that offensive lineman or that tight end at bay so that he can disengage and get to the ball carrier. Does a really good job at the point of attack for a guy his size. Block shedding, I just talked about that and alluded to that. This is a guy that he just finds a way to shed blockers a lot of times, man. And that's a lost art with a lot of linebackers in college, not at the NFL level. At college, you don't see a lot of guys shedding blocks. They either slip it, they run around it, or they get blocked. He's one of those few guys that have mastered the art of shedding blocks. And so he finds a way to slip, or he finds a way to, lock out his arms and then toss a guy aside. He just does a really good job of keeping himself free. There's one play he takes on the pulling guard. Guard's coming around. He attacks the line of scrimmage aggressively, meets that guard before the guard can get up into the hole, attacks him with his inside shoulder to keep his outside shoulder free. The running back tries to sneak past him. He corrals him with that one arm and holds on to him, and help arrives, and it's a 1 yard loss. It's a beautiful play, and it's a great example and illustration of this guy just not necessarily shedding a block, but understanding how to play off of that block and still make a play. Attacks the line of scrimmage. I just talked about him attacking the line of scrimmage. He does it aggressively. Tackling machine. One of the best guys I've seen in this draft at getting players on the ground. Even the best of the best in this draft, I've seen them miss tackles. Not so much with Micah Parsons, but definitely Jeremiah Owusu, Koromoa. Saw him miss a ton of tackles. I saw my number 3 linebacker miss a ton of tackles. And when I say a ton, more than I would like. Not like every other tackle is a missed tackle, but a lot of these guys that I've even talked about already, missing tackles. Not Serrat. When he misses a tackle, I'm shocked. Generally, he gets guys on the ground. Coverage ability. He can run. Let me reiterate this. He can run. So they do some creative things with him at North Carolina. They'll have him mugging the B gap, only to turn and haul ass and try to get all the way back to cover the slot, 30, 40 yards down the field. It's not ideal, okay? And I saw him get beat against Clemson in a similar coverage, but he has the ability to do that, though. He wasn't that far off on that play. And there are so many times where he's mugging the C gap. He looks like he's coming off the edge, or he's mugging the B gap, or he's mugging the A gap. And then he drops out and he hauls ass, and he's right in perfect position to force the quarterback to turn something down. So he's got some ability, man. And in space, man to man, he does a pretty damn good job. I mean, this guy can do it all, man. Blitzing and versatility. One of my favorite attributes from Chaz Serrat is his ability to blitz. There's a knack that you have to have in timing up blitzes. One of the reasons Tyrann Mathieu is one of the best blitzing safeties in football isn't because of his size. We know he's not the biggest guy. Isn't because he's the fastest guy. He's not a speed demon by any stretch of the imagination. Troy Polamalu, same thing. The reason is because they could time it up perfectly. And by the time you snap the ball, they're in full stride and they're already beating that tackle, or they're beating that running back to the spot, and they're getting to the quarterback. And Chaz Serrat is another one of those guys that just times it up well. He's physical at the point of attack with running backs and guys trying to protect the quarterback. And then he's got a couple of moves that he can put on you. But most importantly, he just knows how to time it up, So this guy had 12.5 sacks in 2 seasons at linebacker. They could let that sit and resonate. That's for a 4-year starter. That's a great number at linebacker. This guy had 6.5 sacks his first year and another 6 this past year. He's a problem as a blitzer. And it's that versatility that really drew me to him, is that I can blitz this guy, I can put him in coverage. And, oh, by the way, he's physical at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. And then he's a 3-down linebacker. And I don't like using this term a lot because everybody's got upside. If you're coming from college into the NFL, we hope that you've got some untapped potential. So I don't use upside anymore like I used to. Like, everybody had upside. I would always talk about upside. Only in rare cases do I use the phrase upside. Chaz Serrat has upside. He's only played linebacker for 2 seasons. He's going to get better. He's just scratching the surface. I'm excited for him. Wherever he goes, I will follow him because I want to see if this guy matures the way that I think his skill set suggests he should. There's a lot here to like. His weaknesses. He's 6'2", 227. So I just talked about Jabril Cox being 6'3", 233, and hey, do I want him in the game when I know the other team's going to try to ram the football down my throat on the ground? He's not the same guy as Jabril Cox, okay? Different animal, but he's still 6'2", 227. Let's just round it up to 230. He's still 6'2", 230. It's not big, but I don't think about that anymore because Darius Leonard said, hey, I feel at my best at 215. He played last season at 215. Anybody going to question whether Darius Leonard is the 3-down linebacker or if he can handle himself in the box? I think not. So I look at Chaz Serrat in the same way. Experience, again, I harken back to this. Only 2 years of starting experience at the linebacker position. He could have come out of college last year and entered the draft, and he went back on his own volition and said, I need another year of seasoning at linebacker. And I think he really enhanced his draft stock by doing so. But he only has 2 years of experience at the linebacker position. So while I talk about upside on one hand being a positive, it's also a weakness because he doesn't have a ton of experience. There is a lot that he still has to learn, but that's a good thing. You should be excited about that. Pursuit angles. Not the best in the world at this current juncture. They could get a lot better. There are times where he doesn't take the right angle. There are times where you're like, I wouldn't have gone there. You probably read that wrong in terms of how he gets into his fits in the run game. There are times where, as I talked about, I think with Nick Bolton, how he will attack the wrong gap. There are some issues with pursuit angles with Chaz Serrat, and it's not just in the run game. It's also in coverage as well, as I talked about with Nick Bolton, another guy that, not always taking the best angles. I'm watching him drop, over the middle of the football field, and a tight end's running a shallow cross, and I'm like, hey, just run with him. And instead, he runs underneath the route, and if the ball doesn't get batted at the line of scrimmage, not only is it a catch, he's not in a position to make the tackle. That tight end's going to outrun him, get up the field, and pick up an additional, 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on where the next defender is, yards on the play, instead of him either breaking it up if he just runs into his hip pocket, and stays in phase. You either get a breakup or it's immediate tackle upon catch. So, there's some things he's got to work on, but like I said, pursuit angles need some work. I think 2 years of experience, he'll get better at that. And he can get kicked out and sealed in the run game. There are times where he's a little hesitant, doesn't necessarily attack it fast enough. Then you get a guard coming off of a double team, getting to the second level, and there's Chaz Serrat trying to get to the ball, and that guard says, oh, no, you don't. And he just seals him, and he's done. Can't get off of the block, and now there's a massive hole there where Chaz Serrat should be, or there's a cutback lane where he should have been pursuing and flowing to, and he can't get there because that guard's gotten to the second level and gotten him a piece of Chaz Serrat. There's times where he can get kicked out of a gap. Again, he's 227. And so, you get the right guy with the right leverage and the right momentum, and Chaz Serrat can end up on his ass. And I've seen that happen as well. So, again, it happens, to the best of them. But there's a lot to like here, man. My projection for him, I can see somebody falling in love with all of the things that I mentioned. I fell in love with all of these skills and traits and pick him day one. I could see that happening. I don't see that happening, however. I think he's an early day 2 pick. I think he's a second rounder, a top half of the second round type of guy. But it wouldn't shock me if he just went latter half of the second round. He's going in the second round. I don't think he makes it to the third round, but it's all day 2. He's not getting out of day 2. I can assure you of that. I think he's a second round pick. And my comp for him is Darius Leonard. And I know Darius Leonard is a middle linebacker, and I don't think that's necessarily what Chaz Serrat is. I think he's more of a will at the next level. But I just see a lot of striking similarities to Darius Leonard in terms of the size that Leonard came into the league at, how Darius Leonard attacks the line of scrimmage, how physical he is, how Darius Leonard just doesn't miss tackles. Chaz Surratt's first year at linebacker, he had over 115 tackles his first year. It's his first year. He's already over a buck in tackles. Like, it's crazy. And that again, Darius Leonard, tackling machine. Doesn't miss very often. Darius Leonard, an adept blitzer and tremendous in coverage. So I just see Chaz Serrat having a lot of those similar traits to Darius Leonard. So that's my Chaz Surratt breakdown. He's my number 4 linebacker in this draft. We get to number 3. And my third linebacker in this draft is Zaven Collins, the redshirt junior linebacker out of Tulsa. This is a guy that, again, I didn't really see a lot of him prior to watching the film. And so I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I indirectly ran into him watching the SMU quarterback a week ago, I should say. And in watching him, I said, whoa, he had a fantastic game against Shane Buechele is the SMU quarterback that I was watching. And Zaven Collins just jumped off the screen. I just was like, wow, who's this guy? And didn't take long for me to realize this is the guy that everybody was talking about, the Tulsa linebacker, and for good reason. There are a lot of things that I like. There are a lot of things that I don't like. But one thing's for sure, this guy's uber talented. And you can't teach some of the things that he has, which is why he's my number 3 linebacker. And let's flip this card over and take a look at Zaven Collins. And so my strengths, and the first thing that jumped off the screen at me is his frame, his size, and his length. So I saw this guy, and I saw how he was moving, and I couldn't believe, because the first thing I do before I even put on any tape, I want all the background information. What kind of high school athlete were you, and how did you end up at the school that you ultimately chose, and are you a multi-sport athlete? All these things matter. It's all just background information, really. You don't have to know these things, but I'm curious. And so I need your height, your weight, all of that good stuff. I'm fascinated by the guy that showed up on the campus at 192 pounds, and by the time he left, he was 247 pounds. Like, I'm fascinated by that. This guy's 6'4", 260. And when you look at him, you say, oh my God, this guy's 6'4", 260, moving at that rate of speed. And I think the play that you see all of that kind of come into focus is the overtime pick 6 versus Tulane, where he reads the quarterback, he leaps into the air, snatches the ball out of the air, and then proceeds to take off for like a 97-yard pick 6. And there's no one even in the screen. Nobody close to catching him. He's hauling ass. And you're like, oh my God, this guy can run. And he's 260. So that was the first thing that jumped off the screen. His frame at 6'4", his size at 260, his length, all big strengths. Athleticism and speed, I kind of alluded to that. Much faster than I would have assumed a 6'4", 260-pound linebacker would be. And he's got tremendous athleticism. I just talked about the pick 6. You see this guy dropping into coverage and no problems in space. So comfortable. Generally you hear a 260-pound linebacker fish out of water when you're asking him to drop at a 90-degree angle, or you're asking him to read quarterback's eyes and sink into a zone. It's not a problem for Zaven Collins. Stout at point of attack. When I look at the point of attack, I'm looking for a guy that's going to hold up, that's not going to get blown out of a hole, out of a gap. And at 260, I expect you to be stout at the point of attack. And Zaven Collins is. Does he always shed to make tackles? Nah. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I mean, if he meets you in the A gap, chances are you ain't moving him. That's for damn sure. You may go around him, but you ain't moving him. Can diagnose and then attack the line of scrimmage. When he sees it and he goes and he shoots his gun, good luck. I mean, there are times where he's back there in a heartbeat. And I just couldn't get past the fact that he was so big, moving the way that he was moving. And again, there are some times where he gets back there and you're like, whoa, okay. I see you, big fella. Coverage ability and awareness. To me, these next two strengths are the reason that this guy ultimately has a realistic chance of going in the first round. It's not the size that I've been gushing over. It's not the athleticism, although that helps, and the speed. It's his coverage ability and awareness in coverage, which is just off the charts. I can't tell you how many times I watched this guy, and he had 4 picks this past year, and I watched every single one of them. And it started with the SMU game indirectly, as I talked about watching Shane Buechele, and he ended the game. They're trailing. I mean, they're getting their asses handed to them early in that game, and they scratch and they claw and they work their way back and ultimately take the lead late. And they need a stop. And he just reads Shane Buechele's eyes, and he just drops back and he sinks, and he just falls right into the passing lane and picks it off and ends the game. And it's that kind of awareness. I just talked about the Tulane pick earlier, where he's reading the quarterback's eyes and allowing that quarterback to take him to the football. And it's just amazing to see a guy that aware at the collegiate level. You generally don't see that from college linebackers. You just don't. They're usually running to a patch of grass. Like, you know, I always talk about college linebackers in coverage like the computer on Madden, where they've got a circle, you know, they've got a yellow circle, or they've got a pink circle, or they've got a blue circle, and they're going to run to that circle, okay? The best guys don't run to the circle. They see a player running into their zone, they match him. Or they see where the quarterback's eyes are, they run there. That's where the best guy, Tyrann Mathieu, and I always bring him up because he's so instinctual. He'll be running to his left, see the quarterback looking to his right, and he'll stop, change directions, and run to his right. I've seen him on one play multiple times take away 2 different options on the same play simultaneously. He's running with a shallow cross, and there's a deep dig behind him. He'll stop, turn, pivot, fall underneath the deep dig, and he's just taking away 2 passing options for the quarterback in one play, and now that guy's getting sacked or he's got to throw it away. Zaven Collins is one of those types of players where he's reading the quarterback's eyes and he's falling into the passing lane and making plays. So to me, his coverage ability and his awareness is what sets him apart. But it's this next thing that really pushes him over the top and makes him a potential first round pick. And that's pass rusher and blitzer. They're 2 separate items. You know, when you hear somebody say pass rusher and then blitzer, they're not the same thing. They're not one and the same. Because a blitzer, you're standing up, 2-point stance. You may not be accounted for when the offensive lineman sets the protection, when that center sets the protection, when the quarterback sets the protection. They're not accounting for you. You might be off over the slot, over the tight end, or over a slot receiver, and then you start creeping towards the core, and then next thing you know, you're coming. They didn't account for you. That's a blitzer. You know, you're mugging the A-gap. They don't know if you're coming or not. You know, we're calling out, 23's the mic, 23's the mic. So they're accounting for you, okay? Now they're accounting for you. But you're blitzing or you're dropping out. They don't know if you're coming or you're not coming. When you're a pass rusher, you're a known rusher. They know you're coming. They're accounting for you, and you still beat that offensive tackle, or you still beat that guard. That's different than a blitzer. He can line up, and this is the thing that is interesting about Zaven Collins, is he's a guy that naturally was a pass rusher, okay? And he made the transition to linebacker. And he's a guy that can get after the quarterback. So it's not, he showed up to Tulsa as a quarterback, believe it or not. And that quickly switched. And he is a guy that can stick his hand in the dirt, 3-point stance, and still beat your ass off the edge. Watched him do it multiple times. So he can do some things that really make you say, okay, there's something here, a little bit more than what we bargained for. So he can blitz. He can also pass rush. Durability. This is a guy, 32 starts, over the life of his career. You don't worry about this guy. He's going to strap it up every single week. 3-down linebacker. I just talked about his prowess in coverage. Talked about him as a guy that can play the run. And then I talked about him being a guy that can, pressure the quarterback. So he kind of checks every box. There's really no need in taking him off the field necessarily. And he's a playmaker. That's, if you want, you haven't heard me use that phrase yet. And that's reserved for potential first-round picks. Like, Chaz Serrat isn't necessarily a playmaker. He's a guy that I think can grow into that role, but he's not there yet. Zaven Collins is a playmaker. When he's on the field, things happen. All right, 4 sacks, 4 interceptions, 2 of them pick sixes. Okay, so he's not just picking it off. He's looking to do damage when he gets the football in his hands. All right, couple of pass breakups, a forced fumble, 11 and a half tackles for loss. That's just in 8 games, folks. That's not even in 12 or 13 games. It's 8 games. 4 interceptions, 4 sacks. Playmaker, okay, is the best way to describe a guy like this. That's the kind of guy you take in the first round. If playmaker isn't attached to his name for me at the linebacker position, I can't spend a first round pick on you. Weaknesses. Get stuck on blocks. That's to me my biggest pet peeve with Zaven Collins is there are too many times where I feel like he's content with just taking on a block. Not necessarily looking to get off of the block, but hey, I did my job. I filled the A gap. Somebody else come scrape and make a tackle. I'm like, no, bro, you make the tackle. You can do it. Shed that block and get to the ball carrier. I feel like there could be more of a desire to beat blocks to get to the ball carrier. When he's free, he's an animal. When he's blocked, he's like, meh. And that's the reason I could see him falling out of the first round. Can be fooled by misdirection. There are times where he goes chasing the bait, man. I mean, they set a trap for him, and he goes chasing after it, man. And whap, that trap slams shut, and Zaven Collins is caught in it. I'd like to see him be a little bit more disciplined on the backside of things, when he's crashing down, when you see a run action fake. You can't take 3-4 false steps towards the line of scrimmage. He has to be better than that. Will miss tackles and play behind blocks. Again, sometimes I feel like it's almost like he's conserving energy sometimes. Where you're like, come on, man, I know you could have made that play. There was one game I'm watching him. I can't recall what the game was. But the quarterback tucked it and ran. And I think it was a quarterback draw, matter of fact. And so the running back proved to be like the lead blocker in the play. And the running back, he had the running back by like 40 pounds easy. And I'm like, man, if you don't toss his little ass out the way and grab the quarterback and he just play patty cake with him, and the quarterback ran right by him, I'm like, dude, you couldn't have made that tackle? Are you serious right now? Are you serious? He'll play behind blocks in the run game, though. I went off on a tangent there. He'll play behind blocks. I think sometimes he might be trying to conserve energy. I don't like that. Don't play behind blocks. That's how big runs happen. Get where you're supposed to be and fit where you're supposed to be. And then he'll miss some tackles, man. He missed more tackles than I was comfortable with. A lot more tackles than I was comfortable with him in the games that I watched. Again, short area quickness. He's 260, man. There's got to be some limitations to his athleticism, right? Here's one of them. He's not a guy, again, I don't want him one-on-one with a shifty back over the middle of the football field. I don't want Alvin Kamara squaring him up over the middle of the football field on the arrow route. I don't want Dalvin Cook or Aaron Jones getting a chance to break this dude off something proper over the middle of the football field. Yeah, like he doesn't have the ability to stick his foot in the ground and change directions quickly. I don't want him in those types of situations if I can help it. That being said, I project him as a back half of the first round type of player. Meaning, when I say back half, anywhere from 21 to 32 for me is the back end of the first round. When we start talking playoff teams, that's kind of where I see a guy like Zaven Collins ending up in this draft. Dante Hightower is my comp, and it's just amazing the similarities between the two of them. I remember Dante coming out of Alabama, and I had some of the same question marks about him. And, one of the big things was he got all this talent around him. How is he going to play when he, has to take on blockers? And he turned out just fine, just fine. And he's a playmaker. We can't think about the 28-3 Super Bowl against the Falcons without thinking about Dante Hightower and all the big plays he made in that game and what he's meant to that New England Patriots defense. I mean, look at the defense this year. And they had their moments this year, but no Dante Hightower. And look at the dramatic drop-off that they had defensively in some games where they would just absolutely, run over, like the Rams game on a Thursday night, for instance. So I see Zaven Collins being a similar guy like Dante Hightower, similar size, similar skill set, ability to affect the game in a multitude of ways. Blitzer, rusher, can pick off passes, drop into coverage, kind of do it all. That's what I see Zaven Collins as. So he's my number 3 linebacker in this draft. So we get to my number 2 linebacker, and you already know who my 1 and 2 are at this point. Obviously, Joker is my number 2. Jeremiah Owusu Moa is my number 2 linebacker in this draft. And I'm a bit biased, I will admit. I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. And so he is a guy that I know all too well. I watched him in high school. He's from where I used to live in Hampton, Virginia. So I watched this kid in high school quite a bit. Hell, I even watched him when he played rec ball. I mean, I go way back with this kid. So I know all about his game, his skill set, and what he brings to the table. And I watched him at Notre Dame blossom from a guy that couldn't get on the field as a freshman and was redshirted to a guy that, got on the field in limited spots as a sophomore, as a redshirt freshman, really, and then explode on the scene as a redshirt sophomore and continued that as a redshirt junior. So let's take a look at JOK's card as we flip this thing over. And first thing that jumps out at you is his athleticism and speed. I don't need to explain this to you. But I will go into greater detail as we talk about his acceleration and explosiveness. This is a guy that just looks like he's moving at a different rate of speed than everybody else on the field. There are games where you watch him and it looks like everybody else is moving in slow motion because he's just moving at a different rate of speed. And they're just guys that you look at and you say, they're different. He's one of them, where you just watch him, and I'm just amazed at the entire package. So his agility and short area quickness through the roof, okay? He's got cornerback skills at linebacker Think about that. Let that sink in. When you watch this guy in the slot, and we're not just talking, tight ends. We're talking shifty slot receivers. I'm watching this guy cover 4-3 burners in the slot, and he's step for step knocking the ball away, right in the hip pocket on a slant. And when you're in the slot, it's way harder to cover in the slot than it is out wide, because I call it a 4-way go. Everybody calls it a 3-way go, but it's a 4-way go, because that receiver can come back to the football, he can go up the field, he can go in, or he can go out. And you don't know what he's going to do, and you got to be able to react to all of it. And I'm watching this guy in the slot, and as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, I watched it every Saturday. So I know what he is. But it just really took my breath away watching this guy cover some of these shifty receivers and not give any ground. And it's that agility, it's the short area quickness, it's the explosiveness. Again, closing speed and explosiveness are two different things. When you got closing speed, you can close the distance. You're a guy that can move. It's great acceleration. Explosiveness is different. It just looks different. It pops. You see it, and you know when you see it. That's what he has. Physicality, and he can shed and slip. So, look, he's not a big guy. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he's not afraid to mix it up, man. I always reveled in his ability to just be physical with dudes. Offensive linemen, tight ends, fullbacks, you name it. He was mixing it up with the best of them. And he'd get his ass whooped his fair share of the time, and he'd win his fair share of the battles. But one thing you couldn't match was his quickness. So if he had an angle or he beat you to the spot, there was nothing you could do about it. So I think that this is a guy that, to me, displays and exhibits a lot more physicality than I was expecting when it comes to these, that kind of size and frame that he has. And then his ability to just find the football, to slip, to shed, to just find a way to the ball, it's uncanny. Plays under control. Normally when you get a guy with his skill set that moves at the rate of speed that he moves at, you find yourself with a guy that can get out of control at times. It never seems like he's out of control. And obviously, I'm using the word and phrase never loosely, because obviously there are going to be times where he comes screaming downhill like a banshee out of hell, and a guy's just going to simply stick his foot in the ground, and he may get a piece of him, but he doesn't get him onto the ground. But that's rare, man. Like, he generally plays under control, breaks down, makes form tackles. I mean, coming like a bullet, and then boom, And there's some times where he doesn't make the tackle, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he's a guy that plays, for as fast as he moves, he plays under control. He's a sound tackler. Look, he's going to miss some tackles here and there. Everybody does. But for the most part, he generally gets people on the ground. That was never a complaint from me or any other Irish fan watching this guy play, is that, oh man, he misses too many tackles. Versatility and coverage ability is what makes him who he is. It's the reason he's going to be selected in the first, probably more likely than not, 17 picks of this draft. If I had to guess, I wouldn't be shocked if he went in the top 15. It's a unique skill set that few can match. And again, I talked about this already when we talked about Jabril Cox and his ability to cover in the slot. It is one of the biggest deficient areas of NFL defenses in today's NFL, is covering receivers in the slot, whether it's a tight end that's flexed and detached from the core, whether it's a shifty slot receiver, whether that guy is the Buccaneers slot receiver. Chris Godwin. And again, I talked about these slot receivers getting bigger and bigger, or they're sticking Devontae Adams in the slot, trying to get a mismatch. You have to be able to find guys that can cover in the slot. And when we start talking about guys that can cover in the slot, your defense can't be complete if you don't have a true slot defender. He gives you that. And we saw what a Travis Kelce or Darren Waller can do to an NFL defense. We saw it time and time again last year, where you don't have an answer for what that tight end brings to the table. Bill Belichick has made a living taking away tight ends. When he can't do that, when Patrick Chung isn't available, or Aqib Talib or Stephon Gilmore, he doesn't have one of those elite guys that he can just say, take this guy out of the game. He struggles. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is one of those types of elite players and athletes that you can take him and say, I need you to reduce his impact on this game, and he can do it. And that kind of commodity, whether you think he can be on the field in short yardage situations, or you don't know if you want him on the field when a team is in 4-minute offense, all of that good jazz, all relevant questions and concerns. You bypass all of that because of that trait and that one characteristic I just brought to the table, which is he can shut down the slot. And in today's NFL, where the slot is becoming more and more of an impactful part of the game and position, you better have one of these types of guys or somebody like it. Versatility, coverage ability, I just talked about that. Blitzer, playmaker. This is a guy that I talked about. If I'm going to select you, you better be a playmaker. You better be a guy that's around the football, that's causing havoc, creating opportunities for the defense. That's what he does. Whether he is in the slot, whether he is a blitzer off the edge, you don't know where he's going to line up. He's a chess piece. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's on the left side. He's on the right side. You know, generally he's on the weak side of the defense. But you don't know where he's going to line up. You know, he's a guy that you can play around with, put him in different spots. You can line him up over the slot, and then he can blitz. I can't tell you how effective he was back in 2019 as a slot blitzer. He's covering the slot. You don't account for him. He comes scot-free off the edge, 110 miles an hour. Quarterback sees him too late. He's sacked. Can't tell you how many times that happened. How about the Clemson game this year? You know, he's in the backfield. It's a toss, guys. It's a toss. He's already 3 yards in the backfield. And the reason that Travis Etienne muffs the toss is because he looks and he sees a flash of color. Like, what is this guy doing back here already? He bobbles it right to JK, and he takes off for a touchdown. He's a playmaker, man. Durability and motor. Again, not something that we ever had to discuss at his time at Notre Dame. He was always on the field. He was always available. And then motor always ran hot. Always. Weaknesses. His size. He's a tweener. I mean, what else? What more can I say? He's a tweener. Remember when the phrase tweener carried such a negative connotation that it was a death sentence? Like, you definitely weren't a first-round pick if you were a tweener. Those days are over. With the advent of the new age tight end and the slot receiver being such a big, integral part of NFL offenses, teams welcome tweeners if you have an elite trait like this guy does. So it's a weakness. He's still 217 pounds or whatever. He's still, a smaller guy, but teams are I mean, I remember the Chargers 3 years ago. In the box, they might have had 3 defensive linemen, and everybody else on the field was probably 230 to 215 pounds. Every other player, from the corners to the linebacker, there wasn't a big linebacker on the field. All of their guys were just these chess pieces that they could move around. And you're seeing the NFL not necessarily go to an NBA style of positionless players, but you're seeing more of that than ever before. So a tweener doesn't hurt you as much because there's no true five if we're going with an NBA analogy. There's no true five on the court. So it doesn't matter that you don't really have a real center on your roster. It's not really going to hurt you. You could get away with him being on the football field. Liability in the run game at times. Again, he's 216, man. Like, even if he bulks up a bit and gets to 223, he's still 223 pounds. Is that going to deter you from putting him on the field? I talked about, the Colts and their situation with their linebacker, Darius Leonard, and he was playing at 215 last year. Again, if he didn't tell you, you wouldn't have known, and nobody else was stopping him at 215. So if you want to get to the ball, it's a mentality, just like rebounding in the NBA. If you want it, you can get it. And he wants to get to the football. But he's a liability. He's small. So he's going to get gobbled up at times in the run game. He will slide off of tackles from time to time. That was one of my pet peeves with him at Notre Dame is he come flying in, he'd jump on a guy, and then, like he was on a stripper pole, he would just slide down. And eventually that guy would just take his leg out of that tackle and keep running. You'd be like, come on, man, make the tackle. You did all of that to get there and make this tremendous play, and then you missed the tackle. So he'll slide off of tackles from time to time. Can he be a 3-down player? That's a question for somebody else to answer. I can tell you this: I had no problems with him being a 3-down player at Notre Dame, but that's college football, and the NFL is a different animal. You're not drafting him because of his run defense, so it's definitely a question to be had, but I think he's going to be on the field all 3 downs, personally, myself. But he's a top 20 pick for me. I think he's going to go. I feel really confident that he's going to go in the top 20 picks unless something crazy happens. We've been hearing all this chatter about 5 quarterbacks potentially going in the top 12 picks. That's a little aggressive for me. But if something like that were to occur, and then we see, 5 offensive linemen, because there's some really good guards in this draft too, go, and then you see 2 corners go, and then you see 3 or 4 receivers, then that could push a guy like this back a bit. I think he's going in the top 20 picks. And my comp for him is Derwin James. I remember when Derwin James came out, and Derwin James was more of a pure safety when he came out. But I remember everybody talking about this guy because he was this hybrid defender. Where do you play him? Is he a safety? Could you play him at linebacker? And you really didn't know what to do with Derwin James. You just knew he's an athlete. We got to get him on the field somewhere. Derwin James ended up being more of a safety, but you could drop him over the slot. He had no problems playing there. You could drop him into the box. He had no problems being a problem there. He could blitz. I see a lot of Derwin James in him, just a guy that you can move around. The Chargers did a tremendous job with him when he was healthy, just moving Derwin James around, just not knowing where the hell he was going to line up. And, I also thought of another guy, but I just think his coverage ability is a little bit more exceptional than Telvin Smith. But I remember when Telvin Smith was coming out of Florida State, and he was 215. I'm like, what the hell do you do? And that was before we got to this day and age where, the tight end was so prevalent and the slot was such a big deal. And that was right around the time when the Cardinals was experimenting with Dion Buchanan, and we didn't do 215-pound linebackers at that point. And I remember Telvin Smith coming in, and I'm like, well, he's an athlete, but I don't really know what to do with him. He had ability, but he didn't have the coverage ability. He could drop into coverage, and he had great movement skills, but he wasn't like JOK. He wasn't covering dudes in the slot like this. He wasn't running like he was a corner. So I think he's more Derwin James than he is Telvin Smith. But I can tell you this much. He's a difference maker. And whoever gets him is getting themselves a hell of a football player. That is for sure. And so that finds us at my number one player. You guys already know who it is. But I'll tell you anyway. It's Micah Parsons, Penn State linebacker. He's a junior, and, there are a lot of questions with Micah Parsons that we'll talk about tonight. One thing that you can't question is the talent, the upside, and what he projects to at the next level. When you watch him play, you know that you see a guy that has the ability to change the game. And if you don't watch any other game of Micah Parsons, if I do this with prospects from time to time. I remember if you go back and you watch Alvin Kamara, my Alvin Kamara breakdown, and that's my claim to fame, because I told anybody that would listen that this is a first round running back. And I couldn't believe he fell to the third round, but I kept saying over and over for Alvin Kamara, if you want one game, turn on the Texas A&M game. If you want one Micah Parsons game, it's his final collegiate game. Turn on the bowl game versus Memphis. And that will give you just a little snapshot of what this guy can be. Now, they didn't bother blocking him. And that was their biggest pitfall in that game, is for some reason they forgot who number 11 was and what kind of impact he could have. But he dropped an interception, dropped into coverage beautifully on a play, should have had a pick six. He molested the quarterback. He was in the backfield. I think he forced like 2 fumbles in the game. He recovered a fumble. He was everywhere in that game. Turn on the Memphis game. Do yourself a favor. Treat yourself to a dominant performance. Anyway, let's flip this thing over and get to his card. So, his size and frame. I mean, he's 6'2", 245. Perfect size for an NFL linebacker to play in the middle. He's a Mike all day long, all day strong. I mean, you can play him anywhere, but you don't pass up opportunities to put specimens like this in the slot, in the middle of your defense. Because generally in the NFL, you want your best players right up the middle of your defense. And he has a chance to be one of those special guys at the next level. Athleticism and speed, it jumps out at you when you watch him on tape. He's flying around. And, I admit this. I'm not a college football guy. You guys know that. I watch it in passing on a Saturday. I got nothing to do. I don't like the NFL. I literally plan my day around NFL action on Saturday or Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and some Saturdays. I plan my day around that, my life around that. I don't do that for college football. If I'm home, it's on, great. If it's a massive game, yeah, I might go to a bar and check it out, or I might sit at home and watch it, or I might go to my dad's, mom and dad's and kick it with my dad and watch it. But I don't know these players intimately like I do NFL players. So a lot of times I'll turn on the tape and I have no idea who I'm watching. So I didn't even know his number, And so it didn't take but one play to figure out what number he was, and it's because of his athleticism and his speed. It jumps out at you. Acceleration and explosiveness. Remember, I talked about closing speed being different than explosiveness. Explosiveness is next level. Well, yeah, he's explosive. He's explosive, man. Wherever he goes, shit blows. He's like dynamite. Something's about to blow. And again, I don't see how he makes it out of the top 10. There's some questions. We'll get to that, when we get to the back end of his breakdown. But there's too many good traits here to pass up. And agility and short area quickness, again, the ability to move out in space. I talked about how I don't want Zaven Collins one-on-one with Alvin Kamara I don't want anybody one-on-one with Christian McCaffrey or, Dalvin Cook or Aaron Jones. I don't want anybody in that situation, especially my linebacker. But if I have to have my linebacker be in that position, I want it to be a guy like Micah Parsons. I want it to be a guy that can move, that I know he might get broken off, but he won't get embarrassed. He'll have a chance. He may make a play, he may not, but he's not going to get embarrassed. And it's that agility, that short area quickness. You see it around the line of scrimmage when he's able to get into the backfield, whether he's going after the quarterback on a blitz or getting after a ball carrier. It's that short area quickness that allows him to change directions and things of that nature. That's the kind of stuff that, is able to separate you from, the other linebackers around the league in college football. Physicality, he can slip and shed blockers. I remember watching him in that same Memphis game. And I think it was that same Memphis game. And he meets the offense. I want to say it was the center. Might have been the guard. And he just gives him a quick 1-2 step. He engages 1-2 and just leaves him there. Like that guy just froze. And he's at the quarterback's doorstep, just like that. And if you're a quarterback, what are you going to do? I mean, you thought that guy was accounted for. Why is he in my face right now? It's the same thing in a run game. And he can stack, he can shed, and get to the ball carrier. There's a lot there. Aggressive downhill attacker. And I told you, I always err on the side of the aggressive downhill linebacker. Give me the dude that's not timid. Not the guy that's sitting back on his heels, waiting for the guard to come off the double team and get to his ass 7 yards up the field. Don't give me that guy. That guy's going to piss me off. Give me the dude that's attacking the line of scrimmage, and before that guard can come off the double team, he's got somebody in his ass 2 yards up the field. Give me that guy. That guy's Micah Parsons. Short tackler. Again, I didn't really see him miss too many tackles on tape, man. Like I said, I mean, him and Chaz Serrat, to me, were the two guys. And again, I got more tape to watch on, some other prospects and some other guys. But those were the two that stood out in the tackling department. Didn't see a bunch of missed tackles, man. Generally, he gets there. Guys are going down. Versatility and coverage ability. Again, I think he's still developing in that department. I still think he's got a long way to go in the coverage department. I don't think he is anywhere near where he ultimately is going to end up as a coverage defender. I can tell you that even watching him raw as he is right now, he is a guy that is comfortable in space. So I don't worry about the transition as much when I've already seen evidence of you being able to do it. You need some fine tuning. You're rough around the edges. A little bit of time and some coaching, a little bit of schooling, some film study, and I expect him to be. Now, I don't know if he has hands or not. He looked a little suspect, on the pass he dropped. But if he can catch at all, I could see him morphing into a dude that's, jumping into pass lanes and making some plays. So the versatility, again, if you're going to be the first linebacker off the board, if we're talking about you being a top 10 pick, that goes without saying. You got to be able to get to the quarterback. He had 5 sacks this year. You got to be able to drop into coverage. I know he can drop into coverage. I watched him do it. He's not great at it yet, but the ability, I didn't see a guy that was bashful being out in space. I didn't see a guy that was uncomfortable dropping into to space, into coverage. So I think there's a lot there that you can work with. Blitzer and playmaker. Again, I've already stressed this. I don't need to continue to beat this dead horse. It's already dead. But you want to be drafted in the first round as a linebacker, I need you to be a playmaker. Michael Parsons is exactly that. Like, he was a game wrecker against Memphis. That game was a cartoonish game. It was like 50-something to 40-something. Like, they were like the last team with the ball was going to win. This guy's having a crazy game, and it's still like 45-42 or 48-45. You know, you're like, what? But he was impacting the game. And so that's the kind of guy you want to spend a top 10 pick on. I'm really particular about who I spend top 10 picks on, top 15 picks on, top 20 picks on. And I talked about him being a blitzer, getting home. You know, you don't block him, forget about it. Just go ahead and put one in the sack column. You don't block him. But even when you do block him, there's still a chance he could create havoc on the play. Durability. You know, the last 2 seasons, all games. Know where he's going to be, when he's going to be there. Don't worry about him showing up. He'll be there. And he's a 3-down linebacker. Again, if I'm drafting you in the top 10, you better be. I better not question a single thing about your ability to play on all 3 downs. Or else you don't deserve to be. You shouldn't even be a first-round pick if you can't play on all 3 downs. Unless there's one trait that just supersedes your inability to play on all 3 downs. So, and then the final thing, I didn't list this, but upside. I told you I don't like using that phrase very often unless it applies. Well, it applies here. You know, I talked about Chaz Serrat and only having 2 years of experience at the linebacker position. He's going to get better, infinitely better. Same thing for Micah Parsons. This is a guy that showed up as a defensive lineman at Penn State. He wasn't a linebacker. He's just learning. 2 seasons in right now. He's just learning how to play at the second level. He was used to being on the first line of defense. Now he's at the second level. He's standing up. This is an adjustment for him. This isn't what he came to Penn State to do. So, again, I use upside only in the rare cases where it fits. This is one of those rare cases where I think upside fits. So, weaknesses, experience. He didn't play in 2020. He could have used another year seasoning. Sat out due to COVID. It is what it is. Nobody's going to ding him for that. You know, Caleb Farley, probably going to be the number 1 corner off the board. Didn't play in 2020. Nobody is going to think twice about turning his name in, turning a card in with his name on it. Can get caught in the wash. There are times where he'll aggressively attack the line of scrimmage and just get caught in the wash. Won't be an impact player on that play. There'll be times where he will misdiagnose the play and get caught going in the wrong direction. And then here comes a guard to the second level and bow. He's sealed, signed, sealed, delivered out of the play. So, again, all of these things can be cleaned up with more experience. I don't really get too caught up into those things. Adjusting as a zone dropper. You could see he needs work there. You can see he's still green in that department. And what do you expect from a guy who's still learning the position? Only played it for 2 years. This is what I expect. So I don't, again, really get too hung up on that. I expect him to get better. And then my last one is a big one, because this is where you got to vet the player. You got to know what you're getting yourself into. Because if you ignore the warning signs, if you run through a stop sign or you run through a red light, you could end up with a Reuben Foster on your hands. You could end up with a Greg Hardy on your hands. Like, you have to make sure you do your homework on these players when you take them. You have to know who you're getting and does this guy get it? There are signs that maybe he doesn't get it. In 2018, he got into a fight with a teammate. Reportedly, there was a knife involved. Okay? So that's a problem. That's a red flag. You know, shit happens. If you've ever played football or any competitive sport for that matter, heated exchanges happen. Sometimes they come to blows. Shit happens. All right? But when we start adding weapons into the equation, now I've got an issue. There's hazing allegations that have been levied against former Penn State players, Yetur Gross-Matos, Micah Parsons, among others. And, you know, Yetur Gross-Matos was the guy that was projected to go in the first round. And I don't think he was a first round pick. I told you guys, I thought if he was a late first rounder, but he was more of a second round guy for me. So I wasn't shocked. I thought somebody was going to take him in the first round because of the upside. But if you're on the fence about a guy and you hear about hazing allegations, that's enough for you to say, all right, I'm going to push him down to the second round. Or I'm going to take him off my board altogether. And these hazing allegations, they're pretty, I mean, look, they're juvenile in nature, most of them, but it's, why? Why are we doing this? You know, like, come on. Seriously. What are we doing here? So, at the end of the day, these teams are going to sit down with him. They're going to talk to him. He's going to say the right thing because these kids get coached up on what to say and what not to say. You've got to have, and I've seen shows now where these NFL teams, they have psych evaluators sit in these meetings and ask the questions. Guys that are trained to be able to get through and cut through the bullshit and figure out, is this guy deranged or not? Is this guy sincere when he says, I was young and immature, I've learned and grown. I've grown from that experience or experiences. They have guys that they pay to come in, ask questions that are going to get the answers that they seek. You're going to have to do that with Micah Parsons. You're going to have to vet him thoroughly because there are some off the field issues here. But the talent is undeniable. I can't state that enough. And so, he's a top 10 player, man. I project him to go in the top 10. I don't know how he gets past the Lions at 7 if they stay there. I think the Lions at 7 are a hot spot if they're not interested in a quarterback, which we all assume they're not with the trade for Jared Goff, that 7 could be a hot spot because if a team is looking to get a quarterback, they're probably going to need to get in front of Carolina at 8. And so I could see the Lions trading out of there, but Micah Parsons to me is a top 10 talent in any draft, let alone this one. And my comp for him is Tremaine Edmonds. And the reason he's Tremaine Edmonds for me isn't the size. Edmonds was like 6'5", you know. But Edmonds was 245, somewhere in that neighborhood. He was raw. You know, you didn't really know if you knew that this guy was talented, but there was a lot to iron out with Tremaine Edmonds. I was like, hey, you should rush him a lot more. I don't think Buffalo has rushed him nearly enough. It's perfectly fine. He's turned into a Pro Bowl, all-pro type player in Buffalo, so they figured out what his best usage is. But there were so many questions as to how you can best use a guy like Tremaine Edmonds. Micah Parsons, I think, is a guy that you can look at similarly. I don't think he's the pass rusher that Edmonds was coming into the league, but I see a lot of those same qualities. Raw athleticism, freakish athlete that you look at and say, he's a can't-miss dude. You draft him and you know what you're getting. I wanted Tremaine Edmonds so bad, you know, back in 2017, I believe it was. And he was available, but they went in a different direction. So at the end of the day, Micah Parsons is my number one linebacker in the 2021 NFL draft. So that's going to do it for my linebackers and my list of backers and where they fall in this draft for me. There are a lot of questions, but I can tell you this much. This linebacker group has more answers than we've seen from the linebacker position in quite some time. You know, we haven't had a group like this come along in a very long time at the linebacker position. I'm excited about this group, and I'm still not all the way through. There could be some gems, you know, later on, and I'll break those guys down as well. But there could be some gems later on in the draft. You know, and I've watched the Ohio State guys and Browning and Werner, and I'm going to break those guys down at some point. And I still have to get to I'm just getting through Dylan Moses at Alabama. He looks like a typical Alabama linebacker. Nothing there to see, really. But I'm anxious to get to the Kentucky kid. I'm anxious to get to the Rice kid from Georgia. Snowden from Virginia. There's a few names left that I want to look at. The TCU linebacker, Wallow, Garrett Wallow. There's a number of guys that I want to take a look at that I know are going to be drafted. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And I want to see what these guys bring to the table as well. So in any event, I'll run through here, see if I see any comments to knock out before we glide to the side. Take a few of them. I got a comment here from Captain Spartan, who says that's from Captain Spartan, who says it's Zaven Collins, Chaz Serrat, and everyone else. The rest really depend on what team they go to, if they'll be successful or not. Chaz and Zaven will be successful no matter what. I can't say that with 100% certainty. You can say that about almost every player in the NFL draft with a few exceptions. Most guys are dependent upon where they go, scheme, fit, coaching staff, all of those good things. There are certain guys that just transcend scheme, fit, any of that stuff. You put Aaron Donald in any defense and he's going to be Aaron Donald, and he's going to do Aaron Donald type things. I think that there are a couple of guys in this draft at the linebacker position that kind of fit in that same category. JOK, I don't care where you put him, he's going to be able to play the slot. Doesn't matter what defense he's in. If you just say nothing else but, hey, just play the slot, he'll do that. And blitz occasionally, he'll do that at a very high level. And Micah Parsons is another guy that I just think it doesn't really matter. You could play a 3-4. He could be an inside backer in a 3-4. He could be a 4-3 Mike backer. Doesn't really matter. He's going to be successful, I feel like. But we'll see. Marco Polo says, why in all black like the Omen, bro? Just swag. That's it. Just swag. Reese says, I'm a fan of Jalen Phillips, Lou. I'm a Hurricane, so I may be a tad biased, but he seems like a solid prospect to me. And we'll talk about him when we get to edge rushers. Let's see. Reese says, would you like your team to sign Chips Ahoy, Kyle Van Noy? Ree also says, Jabril Cox seems a bit slender to me. He does have an angular frame, similar to the guy that I comped him to in Zach Cunningham. But, again, for what he's going to be asked to do, perfectly fine, which is cover the slot and disrupt from outside. But, yes, he looks like a corner. He looks like he's got like a safety / corner type frame. Reese says LSUB is linebacker U. Quan Alexander, Deion Jones, and of course the Great White from my Bucks. It seemed like they were a factory for a little while there, where they were just every guy that they turned out to be a stud. And we'll see if they got another one here in Jabril Cox. Salute, dazzling Urbanite. Christian Peterson says, I have the same comp, Lou. I think he and Miles Jack would be nasty together. I don't know who you're talking about at that particular moment, but maybe Owusu or someone you were talking about. Or it could be Serrat. Probably Jeremiah Owusu if I'm looking at the comments and where this one was made. Captain Spartan says, is J.O.K. the linebacker the Broncos finally get for Vic Fangio? Makes a ton of sense. They also desperately need a cornerback. I think corner might trump any linebacker need in Denver. And so they got nothing left out there at corner, really. So, right now the assumption is if they don't do something in free agency, which I don't see them doing, and there are a bunch of corners available in free agency. So if they pull the trigger on like a William Jackson, let's just throw him out there randomly, then maybe they don't go corner at the top of the draft. But if they don't, a lot of people are projecting them to go corner with their top 10 pick. But we'll see. Excuse me. Got a couple of super chats here from my man Vincent Coe. Thank you for the super chat, Vincent Coe. Greatly appreciate you. My man Vincent Coe writes, every time there's a Bama linebacker, it's a C.J. Mosley type. That's the kind of guy they recruit. You know, when you look at Ohio State linebacker, they always have like a similar body type. You know, you can... They're either one body type or the other body type. They're either a big, thick, bulky, 245-pound, muscle-bound linebacker, or they look like Ryan Shazier or, or the Baker kid, where they're kind of, wiry framed, really athletic, but that's what they recruit. Like Pete Warner looks like that. Like kind of that slender frame, even though he's a much bigger guy, he's like got that slender corner looking frame. And Alabama, all their linebackers, the thing that kills me with their linebackers is they always wear some weird ass number like 32. That the shit that makes them look like they trash. Like I've never seen a linebacker wear 30 anything and be like, yo, he nice. At least Reuben Foster was like 10. And that's still a crazy number, but I can rock with 10. I can't get with a dude running around with 32. Like you can't be nice at linebacker and you rocking 32. But you're right, they all look the same. And then my man Vincent Coe, double up, thank you for doubling up, Vincent Coe, greatly appreciate you. Who writes, double up one time, and I just did. Hell, I'll do it again. Double up, greatly appreciate you, Vincent Coe. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. I want to make sure that you guys are subbed up, that you turn on your notification bell so you know when I go live and you don't miss anything. And also, hit that like button. Over 200 of you out there, only 83 likes. Let's get this thing up over 100. If you haven't hit the like button, please show your support and hit it. Got another comment here. Chris Talks Washington, thank you for the comment. Really appreciate you. JP writes, Ron Rivera will want to move up for Parsons, but I wonder if the off-the-field problems will steer Washington and any other teams away, because what if he is a psycho? You don't know, but somebody's going to take him, and somebody's going to take him high. So, Reese says, there is no Patrick Willis in this class, but a lot of really solid linebackers. You can't say that. We don't know if there's a Patrick Willis in this class. Micah Parsons could be Patrick Willis for all we know. There probably isn't. I mean, Patrick Willis, we're having a Hall of Fame discussion about Patrick Willis, and he only played like 7 years in the league. That's how dominant he was for that stretch of time. I don't know if there's one of those in here or not, but I wouldn't jump the gun and say there isn't one of those guys in here. But Patrick Willis's don't grow on trees. I mean, he was like 245, pure muscle, and he ran like a 4.4. Like, I don't know if any of those guys in this draft are doing that. Vincent Coe says, if you put Isaiah Simmons in this draft, is he still a top 3 linebacker prospect? Yeah. He wouldn't have been the first one taken, I don't think. But he's still an elite specimen coming out of Clemson, and his tape was good. He would still be pretty highly regarded in even this draft class. You know, you're talking about 6'3", 6'4", 240, running a sub 4.4. I mean, he might have still been the first linebacker taken. I don't know if he's higher than Michael Parsons, but with Parsons off the field issues, maybe he's still the first linebacker taken in the draft. Got a super chat from Martin Matthews. Thank you for the super chat, Martin Matthews. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, hey, Louie, I know we're talking about linebackers, but I heard the Saints cut Jared Cook. Do you think he fits in with the Washington football team? Sure he does. I don't want him. He makes too many mistakes. Too many fumble at the wrong time, like against the Buccaneers in that playoff game. A costly drop here and there, like against the Buccaneers in that playoff game that got picked off. There's too many mistakes with Jared Cook. When he's good, he's good. When he's not, he's not. But Cook is cool. If we signed him, I wouldn't be mad. But I'd rather go get Kyle Rudolph personally. And still go get a young tight end too. Because, again, Jared Cook ain't blocking no damn body. Christian Peterson says, yeah, I was talking about JOK. Thought so. I appreciate that. Reese says, I think most important traits are their instincts and leadership. Those override physical traits. Derek Brooks comes to mind. He was average physically, but beat you down. Yeah. He also played in a great system that fit his skill set, and he played with some great players. I mean, John Lynch is about to go in the Hall of Fame. I think Rondé Barber is going to ultimately end up in the Hall of Fame. That would make it 4 Hall of Famers on that Bucs defense. Sapp, Brooks, Lynch, and Barber. So when you play with those kind of athletes in that scheme with Tony Dungy and those great defensive minds that were there, you can get away with some stuff too. But in today's NFL, and that was a different time. In today's NFL, is Derek Brooks going to be as dominant as he was? Probably not. Probably not. JP says, Washington is definitely going to be sniffing around free agency and the draft for linebackers. Which one remains to be seen, but I hope we either get Parsons or the Notre Dame kid. I think they're going to be aggressive at linebacker as well. Where and when, I can't tell you, but as you mentioned, I do think they're going to be aggressive in some form or fashion. Reese says, I think the fumble versus the Bucs was more Antoine Winfield making a great play versus Cook messing up. It was both. You know, secure the damn rock. You got the first down already. Secure the damn ball. It's a great play. Not a good play, a great play by Antoine Winfield. That's what playmakers do. They make plays. But Jared Cook was sloppy with the handles, and that thing got poked free. Vincent Cole says, I legit saw like 5 times Drew Brees talking to Cook on the sidelines after he made a mistake in the game. I could believe it. I could definitely believe it for sure. Anyway, I digress. I thank you guys for joining me. And once again, hit that like button, If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. More importantly, if you haven't done that already, turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Please hit that like button. Let's get this thing over 100 likes. That's important to me to get it over 100 likes. If you haven't hit the like button already, please hit it. Over 200 of you, only 93 likes. Would love to get this thing over 100 before it's all said and done. So Vincent Coe says, is the Van Noy cut purely just a move because of the low salary cap? Yes. Last year was the first year of his new deal. He played really well for them. Not like he was a massive disappointment. Everybody's struggling to get under the cap. It's a much lower cap than what it's been, and you got to make some moves. So you're gonna see more guys get cut that you didn't expect. So hang tight. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, on the Draft Prospects 101 series live. Linebackers. I don't know what position we're going to do next week. Whatever the spirit tells me to do, whatever the spirit hits me, that's what I'm going to do. But we're going to keep the party going and make sure that it's a hell of a position, whatever is next. But that's it. I'll allow you guys to go back to your regularly scheduled programming on this Wednesday evening. And I will see you guys later on in the week. If you're a Washington fan, I'll see you tomorrow night. And if you're looking for the podcast, I'll be back on Friday. So, with that being said, you guys take care. And thank you for joining me. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.